Hello everybody, I'm Amy and I'm the owner of Craft and Thrift Shop on Etsy. You can see the link up the top somewhere and down in the description box. And I sell vintage, sustainable, thrifted, dead stock fabric on Etsy. I also have a website, which again I'll put somewhere up here, www.craftandthrift.co.uk. And I have an Instagram, so I'm at Craft and Thrift on Instagram, and obviously I'm here on YouTube as well. I also have an email newsletter, a weekly shop update one every time I put new fabric in the shop, and then a monthly kind of more long form one where I talk about things I've been sewing and my thoughts on sustainability issues and whatnot. So you can find out all of that on the website and in the description box below. But otherwise, let's get on with this month's episode. I feel a bit tired today, if I'm honest. I was out in the beating sunlight yesterday building a compost bin for my granny, and I had awful allergies. This doesn't happen very often to me. I often have just like low-grade grumbling allergies, but nothing you can't just kind of get on with. But yesterday it was just like constant sneezing, streaming nose, streaming eyes. And I know in the grand scheme of things it's not a huge amount, relative to people with actual chronic health problems and whatnot, but just leaves you feeling exhausted, like kind of sweaty, clammy, and just really tired from just like constantly, blowing your nose and dealing with all of that. And then on top of that, it being like 20 odd degrees, which again is like nothing, isn't it? But in Scotland, that's a big deal. And yeah, manual labour building a compost bin. Today, I just feel, just totally wiped out. So this episode is going to be quite a chill one. Two of the sections are some time-lapse photography of me, time-lapse video, I should say, of me sewing a cutlery roll. So that's in the sustainability section. So if you want to sew your own one, hopefully you can watch that video and get some guidance. And then in the self section, I've got some lovely footage from our holiday to Skye recently that I wanted to share with you all. So I'm going to set them to kind of pretty relaxing music, so you can just grab a cuppa and your knitting and join me for a little bit of a chill out session. So the more chatty bits are going to be the sewing section, where I've got some plans to share with you all, and the small biz section where, again, I've got some more plans to share. So yeah, that's the rough outline for the May episode. So thanks as ever for tuning in, and let's get started. So in the sewing section, I've got a whole pile of plans to share with you. Some of these are quite concrete plans, things like you can see I've already cut out, and others are just for funsies, things that I'm thinking about sewing over the next few months. As a side note, I have a fairly unpopular hashtag on Instagram, hashtag make3in3, with the threes being number threes. I came up with this with two friends from the sewing world, Franca, who I think is Apple Franca, or Oranges and Apples, I'll link below anyway, Apple Franca I'm pretty certain on Instagram, and Kerry, who is Kestrel Makes on Instagram. And we were talking about the Make 9 challenge on Instagram, which, if you're not aware, is a kind of gentle challenge where in January of each year you pick 9 patterns or plans that you're going to make that year. I don't think the 9 is based on anything other than it makes a nice grid in an Instagram square, because obviously it's square and then you can do sort of a grid of 3 by 3. I always thought 9 was quite a nice number of projects because it's less than one a month. So if you've got something quite meaty like a pair of jeans or a coat, something that for me at least would take several months to make, you can have a couple of those plans and then have some quicker plans that might take you less than a month, like a couple of t-shirts or something like that, patterns you've made before. So I've done Make 9 a few times, but if I'm honest, I've never actually finished everything on the list. And I've never really kind of held myself to any like kind of standard there, because, you know, over the course of the year, like, your needs change, you know, you rip a hole in the favourite pair of trousers and suddenly a pair of trousers jumps up the list or whatever. So I've never really kind of set much store by, like, you know, you have to religiously finish everything that you put a plan in place for in January. I don't think it's quite meant to be like that. But equally, when you do your kind of review post at the end of the year, where you look back on the year at what you planned to make and what you ended up making, I often find it can be quite disheartening, because then you're like, well, I planned to make these 9 things and I actually only made 3 of that 9, but I did make, you know, 12 items in total. It's just that I only actually planned to make 3 of them and the others were more kind of spontaneous. And that can kind of leave you with a bit of a feeling of having like failed somehow, do you know? Even though you haven't, because obviously if you're sewing for yourself, it doesn't really matter, right? So long as you made 12 or 9 or however many items that you actually love and wear, or you learnt something in the process, then it kind of doesn't really matter if you didn't complete everything on your list. But I think the sort of perfectionist in me, the completionist, wants to make a list and then go through and like religiously tick it all off. But, you know, that sometimes that's just not sensible, and there's no point ticking off something just for the sake of ticking it off if it's actually not something that you really want to wear anymore. So that's where me and Franca and Kerry came up with the idea of Make 3 in 3. So for me, through work, at least in my last big job, we used to kind of structure things in quarters, and I still do this a little bit with my own business, that, you know, you split each year into quarters. So like January, February, March would be one quarter. So each quarter is 12 weeks long. And you can get a lot done in 12 weeks, but also on the flip side of that, it's a far enough goal in terms of time that you've got time to do things. So it's not like saying, sorry, that was badly worded because I was distracted by Badger clicking in the next room. But say you set a goal for a month, that only gives you 4 weeks to do something, right? So if it's a small goal, that might be quite manageable for you to split it down into, you know, weekly or daily tasks to complete that goal in 4 weeks. But if it's a larger goal, and if we're talking about sewing, for example, then a larger goal might be sewing a pair of Morgan jeans. Like, there's no way for me personally I'm going to sew a pair of Morgan jeans in 4 weeks, not unless I'm on holiday for like a significant chunk of that time. So for me, 12 weeks is a more manageable time frame to set a goal over. I'm more likely to actually achieve something in 12 weeks. But equally, it's not too long a period of time, because of course the risk is you set a goal for like a year and it can be very kind of nebulous, that feeling of like, oh, it's like it's months in the future, I've got loads of time to sort that, you know, I don't need to think about that right now. And then suddenly 9 months has passed and you've done nothing. You're suddenly like, shit. So that's sort of my thought with Make 3 in 3, was that generally over the next 12 weeks of your life, you've got a rough idea of what's going on. You know, you can look at your calendar or your diary and be like, well, I've got that big meeting here and we're going to that wedding here and whatever. And then you can kind of plan the projects that you might want. So like, big business meeting or a wedding or whatever, something where you think, well, I really want to make XYZ for that specific date. You know that that's coming up, so you can plan around that. But also planning your time for sewing. So say you want to sew a jumpsuit to wear to a wedding, and the wedding is 11 weeks from now, then you can look at your calendar and be like, right, well, I'm working these days and I've got a social occasion on these days and I've got a dentist appointment here and a doctor's appointment there. So how manageable is it for me to take on a big project like a pair of jeans or a jumpsuit or whatever? So I think for me personally, at least, breaking the year down into 12-week chunks is a little bit more manageable. So we created this hashtag, Make 3 in 3. And I actually phoned into Love to Sew podcast about it. I think it was 2 years ago. For their January episode, they asked for people to call in with like plans on how they planned and things like that. So I called in and I left a voicemail and they played the voicemail on the podcast. I was actually famous. I actually cried when I listened to it. I was that excited about the fact that I'd got onto my favourite sewing podcast. So if you could be bothered, you can go back and listen to that. I can find the link and put it below. But it was about Make 3 in 3, and I thought, I'm probably not the only person out there that struggled with the Make 9, so maybe there are other people. And a few folk did pick it up. Like, there are some people who regularly use it, and I try to share their posts on my Instagram stories, but it's not as popular as I guess I kind of hoped it would be. So if you're out there and you fancy it, feel free to start using it. It's just hashtag Make 3 in 3 and I'll put it below as well. And then maybe if people start using it, I can start sharing things on the podcast here, which would be quite fun. Having said all that, I actually haven't really planned my next 12 weeks. I guess I've got a vague idea of what I'm going to be sewing. 2 of the things are secret projects that I can't really talk about here because they're for friends who I'm pretty certain watch the podcast. So I didn't want to talk about them too much here or show you fabric or anything like that because it kind of gives the game away. And my Morgan jeans are still ongoing, so you probably remember from last episode that I have the Morgan jeans cut out and I've mostly sewn the front crotch, but it's kind of stalled. I haven't picked that up for a couple of weeks now, so I really need to pick that one back up again. I've also got a couple cut out. This one is another pair of Hudson's that mostly I have stalled. Yes, the Hudson pants by True Buys. Mostly this project is stalled because it's kind of boring now. Like, I've sewn 2 of these recently. And this is the 3rd and hopefully the last one for a while. It's just in this like navy ponte from the shop. And it's a really nice soft material. I wanted a plain navy pair to replace the original navy pair that you might remember me talking about. I bought when I rather foolishly took up playing women's rugby at vet school. And they're still going, those joggers, but I mean, they are kind of gross now and they sort of need to be consigned to fabric heaven, otherwise known as the textile recycling bin. So I thought, I know when they're gone I'm going to miss. I like the fact that they're navy because they go with a lot of t-shirts, and I know that sounds kind of silly because like you're wearing them to just like slob around the house, right? But I like to feel kind of put together even if I'm wearing sweats. And I knew I would miss. I've got a dark grey pair now and a light grey pair, and I thought a navy pair would just like complete that, and then I can sort of mentally put that pattern to bed for a while. That's my plan. Marie of Stitch Odyssey recently made a whole bunch of Hudson pants as well, and she went for like super bright, lovely colours, like really pretty, like dual colours. I think there's like a coral colour maybe. You can check them all out on her Instagram. And I love the idea of doing that, but I like my bottoms to go with my tops, and I don't know, I just felt like if I went with brightly coloured bottoms I would end up with like wardrobe orphans, like have no t-shirts that went with them, that kind of thing. So I've kept mine kind of plain and boring, neutral. But I think they'll go with a lot and make it easy to get dressed on days when I can't really be bothered to wear anything other than sweatpants. So that's that plan. And it has basically an evening, maybe 2 evenings worth of sewing. So that'll be a nice easy one. I'll have that finished fairly quickly. This one is the Lubox top by So DIY, who are one of my favourite tried and tested patterns. I'm going to talk about these later in the episode in the small biz section as well. But this is, you might recognise this fabric I used for pocket linings for my slightly failed brown corduroy trousers that I made back in January, February, so they'll be in one of those episodes. And I wore them a bit, but they just don't feel particularly, I know we're not supposed to use the word flattering, but they don't make me feel particularly comfortable in my own skin. Like, there's a lot of extra fabric around the crotch area. They make me feel wide in places that I don't really like to feel wide, albeit, now I've said that out loud, that's a bit of internalised fat phobia going on there, isn't it? So I've not really been getting much wear out of them, so my plan is to cut them up and reuse the fabric. But I had some offcuts of this lovely horseshoe print, which I also have a Deer and Doe Melio shirt made from. But I love this fabric so much I couldn't just consign the remnants to the recycle bin. So I've cut out a Lubox top. Not that I need any more of them, but it's a nice, easy pattern to sew, and I know what I'm doing, and I know I'll get a lot of use out of it. So it seemed kind of a no-brainer. Sorry, I'm getting really stuffy again, so apologies if I sneeze all over this. So that's the two kind of definite ones, plus the Morgan jeans that are obviously ongoing. So I guess that's my make 3 and 3. These ones are slightly more longer term plans, probably the next 6 months. I'm going to split them in 2. So I should have looked up the name of this before I started, but Kerry of Kestrel Makes and Marie of Stitch Odyssey host I think it's called Vintage Fashion Pledge, something like that, in September. And it's a pattern challenge where you sew a vintage pattern. And I've always enjoyed following along, but I've never really taken part because vintage patterns have never really been my cup of tea. I think up until this point I've not really had the skill to deal with them because often the instructions are quite scant, and I've always needed a little bit more hand holding. But I feel like I'm feeling brave, and Kerry recently had a bit of a de-stash, and I picked up these two from her, and this adorable card. So thanks so much for that, Kerry. I absolutely love the magazine Vogue. I had a subscription years ago that Andrew, when we first started going out, he bought me a subscription for a year or 2 years. And I really, really love a physical magazine, but it feels so wasteful now, do you know, climate crisis and all that, and the paper is that sort of high gloss stuff that's really difficult to recycle. And much as I love looking at the adverts because they're so kind of ridiculous and bougie and unobtainable, but also kind of amazing in terms of the style and the creativity and whatnot, it is a lot of adverts. I mean, that magazine is this fat and it's probably 60% adverts. So I cancelled my subscription after a while because I was just getting a bit annoyed about it's quite a lot of money. Because he paid for the first year for me and then I just took over after that. It's quite a lot of money to spend when you're maybe only getting a small proportion of actual articles and the rest is just adverts, do you know? So I actually, when I moved to Edinburgh, I had this big fat stash of Vogue magazines that I couldn't really afford to bring with me because we had quite a small flat. We still have quite a small flat. So I think I sold them on Gumtree for something like 20 quid to a fashion student, which now I'm like, oh, what a bargain. I wish I could buy them back again because I'd love to go back through them and look at all the old noughties styles, you know, but that's fine. It's the kind of thing I can probably pick up at a car boot sale at some point or other. But yeah, so Kerry was having a de-stash, so I bought this one, which is Simplicity 5022. Hopefully you can see. It's this fabulous collection of shirts. I mean, check out it. Could you get any more 70s than that? The enormous, what's this, collar points and the floral greens fabric, so amazing. So the shirt that really caught my eye was this yellow one with the short sleeves, because I think short sleeves or sleeveless is the kind of button-up shirt that I'll actually wear day to day. I've made one button-up shirt for myself with the long sleeves, the one in that horseshoe print fabric, but I don't really wear it day to day because it just feels quite formal. So it's the kind of thing, if I worked in an office, I would probably wear regularly to an office, but I don't have that kind of job. Whereas a sleeveless shirt or a short sleeve shirt, I could totally see myself wearing that. It also comes with this incredible tie. So I don't know if you can see down here, this floral tie, which Kerry has written on the postcard, please, underlined, make a tie to go with the waistcoat. So we'll get onto the waistcoat shortly. But I think I will, Kerry. I think if I'm going to take part in vintage fashion pledge, I will look that up and I'll put it in the description below, or I'll put a little pop-up thing up here. I think I will make the tie as well, because I mean, they've done it in this amazing paisley print fabric as well. Like, the whole thing is just so incredibly 70s. I'm assuming it's from the 70s. Does it say? Yeah, 1972. I mean, it couldn't have been from anywhere else, I don't think. So that's that one. And then this one, which looks newer. Let's see if this says... Oh, 1977, so it's still pretty old, but just the style of the pattern envelope looks newer. Looks, newer than 70s, but apparently it's 1977. And the reason I bought this one, it's actually a size bigger than I would normally buy, but because of the vintage sizing, when I looked at the bust, it does have a 32-inch bust, which is me, 33.5, and then because it's like juniors and kids, I'm a bit confused. This is where I fall down with vintage patterns, because this says size 14. So does that mean it's only the size 14 that is in this envelope? I guess we'll find out when I take them out. So if it's a size 14 that's in the envelope, they've got that down as a 36-inch bust. So that might well be too big for me. But the waistcoat has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pattern pieces. And it looks like it's done with princess seams rather than darts. It's only got a line drawing of the back, annoyingly, not of the front. But just kind of squinting at this one at the front here, it looks like it's princess seams rather than darts. So if that's the case, I could probably baste that initially, she says, having never done this before, but baste that initially, try it on, and then bring it in further if I need to. But this is slightly awkward. My elderly neighbour has just walked past and is like peering through the window at me. It's probably the light ring that's caught his attention, I imagine. But yes, it looks fairly straightforward. So it's this one here, and they've done it in this actually quite tasteful for a simplicity for a big four. I often find the styling on the front's a bit random. It's actually quite a tasteful kind of Air Force blue wool. I think they've done it in something like that. But I was inspired by this one by Sewing Bee, because in the Reduce, You Reuse, Recycle episode, they made a man's waistcoat out of old clothes from charity shops, and I just thought that was a really cool idea, because that's the kind of thing, like, you see so many clothes in charity shops, and I know it's that slightly controversial, like, you don't want to be taking big sized clothes or larger end of the size range clothes to cut down to make smaller sizes, because obviously people in those size ranges also need those clothes, and I do totally see that point of view. On the other hand though, I mean, the charity shops near me, there are loads of them, and there are thousands and thousands of tons of clothes that go through them every year. And like Patrick was saying on Sewing Bee, you know, as a country, we send however many, I can't even remember what he said, thousands, millions of tons of textile waste to landfill every year. So to a certain extent, whilst I totally get the argument of, you know, keeping larger size clothes for people who need those sizes, equally I also see the argument of textile waste is a real problem, and anything that we can do to minimise clothing going to landfill is obviously a good thing. I think the issue that places like, or shows like Sewing Bee come into, is that they're often using what looks to be quite nice clothing. So, you know, when I go into charity shops, there is an awful lot of like acrylic, polyester, bobbled stuff, things with like kind of stained pits and things like that, where you think, okay, well, fair enough, if somebody can take that and cut it down and use the usable bits and recycle the unusable bits, I think that's a good shout, because I can't imagine anybody would want to buy that and wear it in its current form, or things that are like so dated as to be like not even ironic, just nobody would want them. They're so unfashionable, do you know? I think the problem I have with things like Sewing Bee and the Reduce, Reuse, Recycle week is that often they're cutting up things where you think that was actually a really nice wool jacket in of itself, and somebody would have probably worn that as it was. So to take something like that and cut it up does feel like a bit of a waste, because you think somebody would have used it. And now it's sort of, you know, especially when they do the like refashion challenge, and you know, half the time what they produce is kind of fairly poor quality, and like, no shade on them, it's not like I'd be able to do anything better in 90 minutes or whatever, but they're not obviously making something that's going to last a lifetime. They're making something to wow the judges to get on to the next part of the challenge. So I would love to know what happens about those clothes, but I suspect they get recycled. And you know, they're like 6 people or 10 people, like it's not a huge amount of clothing. But if the idea is that it's like inspiring people to do things like what I'm about to do, buy a pattern, go out, buy some secondhand clothes, turn it into a waistcoat, then I do think, yeah, you've got to be at least cognizant of the fact that like some of the clothes that you're cutting up are actual decent fabrics and materials and styles and things that somebody would probably buy and wear. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is, because I've certainly bought clothing from charity shops specifically to cut up to make into other things, so it's not like I'm not guilty of doing that exact thing, but I just think it's worth being aware of it, you know. So yeah, I thought those two together would be good for my September Vintage Fashion Pledge Challenge, because I actually thought they'd go really nicely together if I get the time, and this is like so incredibly hopeful of me. I could make the shirt with the short sleeves, with the tie, with the waistcoat, and that would be pretty epic. So we'll see, we can come back to that. And then one of my friends recently, hi Katie if you're watching, gifted me a whole bunch of patterns when they were destashing. And again, it's quite a nice mix of shirts, so we're not going to go too much into detail with the shirts, because I did pick this pattern for the shirt, this like tie front. I thought it was super cute, but I'm never going to get that done this year, and I've got other shirt plans that are taking priority, so that'll be in the future. The other one that caught my attention in this pattern was this quite cute pair of, hair's doing really weird things. I've just had it cut and it's super short and I'm just struggling a little bit with it, but anyway, sorry. Yeah, this super cute pair of, they've styled it kind of vintage retro rockabilly kind of thing, but in the line drawing it just looks like a fairly straightforward pair of straight leg trousers. I'm trying to see, what do they suggest fabric wise? Lightweight to medium weight woven fabrics, broadcloth, shirting, that's presumably for the shirt. Oh, here we go, sorry. Denim, twill, poplin, stretch wovens. So I actually have a stretch navy twill in my stash. It's a bit polyestery. It's more polyestery than I would normally choose, but it came from a destash that somebody sold me that's now gone in the shop. But I kept this cut for myself because I thought it'd be quite a nice, just for like a basic pair of kind of slim fit cigarette pant type trousers, which if you're a newsletter subscriber, you'll see that was one of the things that came out of my Me Made May, is I'd quite like a pair of just slim fit navy kind of trousers. So they might be a contender. The Eve trouser by Merchant and Mills. So this one caught my eye because this is kind of what I was going for with my corduroy trousers that I made back in January that were a bit of a fail. And I kind of thought, you know what, maybe I just follow a pattern. Maybe I don't take it upon myself to try to create a pattern when I clearly don't have the skills or imagination to do so. I maybe look at the plethora of trouser patterns out there and pick one instead and actually follow someone else's instructions. Someone else who's an expert, who's done it themselves, done lots of testing, etc. Why do I think I know better? I don't know. But yeah, so the Eve trouser, it's quite a kind of basic, loose, they say a neat fitting, cropped and tapered trouser. I quite like the very simple waistband, and it's got a side closure, which I've not done before, so that could be quite interesting. They say medium woven fabrics, so cotton, twill, denim, corduroy, light to medium woolens, linen or tencel. So that one might be good for my corduroys. I might make for all that they're quite simple, I'll probably still make a toile, just because I don't have a huge amount of that corduroy left, and I don't want it to go to waste, especially since I've already kind of fuckoed one version. So yeah, that's that plan. Side note, nice packaging, nice feeling corduroy, cardboard envelope. So that's that one. This is another possible contender for trying my corduroy trousers again. I quite liked this. There we go. This one. I liked the whole like high waist braces, cuffed trouser bottom. I thought that was really cute. I don't know if I would be brave enough to go straight for this style. It is quite a style, and I think depending on how you make it up, it could look a bit costumey, so you'd have to be quite careful with that. But even that one aside, this pair, version A, it's quite a nice kind of simple waistband with pleats and whatnot, and it's got slash pockets again, which is the problem that I had with the corduroy ones. The slash pockets then kind of bulge outwards. So yeah, I don't know, not in a rush to try that one, but I did like the idea of the high-waisted version. So that's a possibility. And I prefer the tapered leg, so I'm wondering if I could do view A, but with the tapered leg. We'll see. Because the view B, the part below the high waist, looks like it would be very similar, so I could just taper off the leg for view A. Here we are, going off piste again. When it goes horribly wrong, it'll be all my fault. And then this, Katie very kindly gave me, because Deer and Doe patterns are not cheap, and it is the saffron jeans, which are, I think, quite a popular one in the sewing world. They're not great from a size inclusivity point of view, Deer and Doe. So the largest size hip is 40.5, which is pretty poor when you think like a more size inclusive pattern goes up to like almost a 60-inch hip these days. So that's pretty poor show. But I kind of wanted to try them, and since they were being given away, I kind of feel like, well, I'm not giving money directly to Deer and Doe, I guess. Although now I'm talking about it on YouTube, so I don't know if that's any better. But it's a high-waisted skinny jean and pant. Version A has back pockets and belt loops, and version B is pared down with a cropped ankle length. So I guess depending on whether you were doing it in like denim or otherwise, you might want to go with the kind of the more classic jeans look or the more pared down look. But this one is for stretch denim, so I'm not making this one anytime soon, because I don't really need any more stretch jeans, but it's 20 to 30% crosswise stretch, so they are quite stretchy. This one I thought to replace I have my favourite pair of skinny jeans, are a pair I panic bought from Tesco years ago because the trousers I was wearing that day bust in the crotch. They weren't me-mades, but yeah, so I literally had like my whole pants on show, as in my underoos. So I just ran into Tesco and like kind of panic bought the first pair of skinny jeans I got, and then once I got through the checkout, went to the toilet, pulled off the labels and wore them for the rest of the day. And they've actually weirdly proved to be one of my most comfortable and most worn pair of jeans. They're quite a high waist, which I quite like, and they're quite stretchy, so they probably are like 20 to 30% stretch. So from that point of view, that's when I saw this one and I thought, ooh, thanks, Katie. So those are all more kind of future plans. I think this little pile down here is my next 12 weeks. And then when we get into September, I will do, hopefully, at least some of my, where's the other one gone? There it is. Of this plan. I think at the very least, maybe all three is a bit much. At the very least, I would like to try the waistcoat because I think that would be quite fun. And this short sleeve shirt I think would be quite wearable. So, but then Kerry said I have to make the tie, so my hands are tied, right? small business section, I wanted to show you one of the kits that I've been stocking in the shop for a while now. They're quite popular actually. They're more popular than I sort of anticipated, so I'm actually planning on making more kits, which is another reason why I wanted to sort of have this little natter. It's just about some vague plans for the shop over the next few months. But I thought I'd start by showing you these. So you might have seen these before, either on Instagram or in the newsletter. This is my Sew Your Own Underwear kit. So it comes with 3 cuts of jersey, so each cut is 0.6 of a metre, and there's 3 coordinating colours. So this one's obviously got a floral with pinks and blacks in it, so then I chose a hot pink jersey and a black jersey to complement them, and then they each come with 7 metres of fold over elastic as well, which is, if I get out, which is enough to make the largest size of the Sophie Hines median knickers. So I chose that pattern as my sort of base for these kits because I've made that pattern a lot for me, so it was a pattern that I felt comfortable kind of promoting the kits, and talking about things that you could make with them. It was kind of a natural pattern to talk about because it's the one that I make and wear for myself the most. I also for a short period offered kits with the pattern as well, which were actually really popular, sold out really quickly, so I'm waiting for Sophie to start restocking her paper patterns so I can do that again, because she's, I think, in the process of updating the pattern envelope maybe, or booklet, something like that. Anyway, so you can't buy paper patterns from her at the moment, or at least you can't buy them wholesale. So once they're available to wholesale again, I'll definitely be buying some more to make some kits. But yeah, that was the basis. So I looked on her sizing chart, and because hers is quite a high waist, like full coverage pant, I thought if I make sure that the amount of elastic and fabric that I'm offering in the kits covers the largest size, it means if you choose to make any other pattern with them, there should be plenty of material there, because her pattern is quite a high-waisted one, full coverage around the bum as well. So if you've got enough to make the largest size of the Sophie Hines medians, you're going to definitely have enough to make the largest size of a smaller pattern, you know, like a sort of more like a, I don't know all the different names for pants, like a less high-waisted, a lower-waisted pants pattern, or a thong, or whatever. So that was my thought when I chose her pattern as the basis. Most of my kits don't come with a pattern, so the idea is that you've got the fabric and the elastic, and then you choose your own pattern, because I'm very aware that underwear is quite a personal choice, and lots of people already have a pants pattern that they particularly like to work with. But then you might have seen Zoe Edwards of Sozo blog. She recently re-released her free pants pattern. So she very kindly offered this free pattern to the sewing community years and years ago, like back in the noughties, I think. This was one of the first pants patterns that I certainly worked with. And Zoe's blog was one of the first sewing blogs that I ever read. So she recently re-released that pattern with an extended size range to make it more inclusive. So when I saw she was doing that, I reached out and was like, oh, do you fancy collaborating? Because I offer these kits and you've got the pattern, and maybe we could like promote each other, sort of thing. And then she very kindly suggested that maybe what I could do is offer to print the pattern for people to include with the kit. So I don't print the instruction booklet because it's like 23 pages long, and from a sustainability point of view, I didn't think that was necessarily the best option to print that whole thing. But you can download it really easily off Zoe's website. So the idea is that I would print the pattern pieces, include them in the envelope with the kit, and then you can go to Zoe's blog and download the instructions and just read them off a laptop or a tablet or whatever. So that's the plan, and that's what I'm now doing. So for a nominal £3 extra, I'll print the pattern pieces for you, and then you'll obviously have everything you need, like the 3 cuts of fabric, the fold over elastic, which I should show you comes mounted on a little printed card, and then the pattern as well. And the kits have actually been really popular. Like, kind of surprisingly so. So I was kind of thinking for the business, like, how else can I offer kits? Like, I've got absolutely mountains of jersey. Are there any other fabrics, any other patterns that I could potentially offer as a kit? So I've got a few irons in the fire, and I don't want to sort of come out and say anything for definite just yet because things are still brewing. But I'm hoping to offer a kit for a top of some description. I'm sure you can guess which one. And possibly some homeware as well, like things that you can make for your home as a kit. Obviously not out of jersey for that, more like upholstery material. But that's the plan for the next few months for the business that I'm developing them behind the scenes. I'm very keen to offer, obviously, a sustainable option for things like thread. So I'm doing a lot of research at the moment on that. So, for example, there's a Scandinavian brand that offers 100% organic cotton thread on a wooden spool, so there's no plastic involved, which is great. So I'm kind of intrigued by that. But then the downside is it is a virgin resource, like it's a brand new, it's new cotton, and obviously cotton, even if it's farmed organically, is still quite polluting in the sort of processing, dyeing part of the process. So the other option is that Gutermann, who make good quality thread, they offer a 100% recycled polyester thread. So obviously, downside of polyester is plastics, microplastics, etc. It's not biodegradable the way that cotton is. But then the plus side is they're taking plastic that's already in circulation and recycling it in a way that makes it usable as a new product. So that's kind of, in some ways, a better process than like producing something like brand new, do you know? There's pros and cons for both, so I don't think either are wrong, but it's just trying to work out what's best for me and the business, what's sustainable in terms of like time and energy for me sourcing it, what I'm actually actively able to get my hands on. Like, I've been registering with wholesale websites recently, but one of them, for example, they ask you lots of questions because they only sell to businesses, not to customers. So you have to prove that you're a business, which is fine. Like, I've got company's house paperwork and things like that for that. But this particular company, you have to sell products through your own website, so not through a third-party website. So that rules me out because I sell through Etsy. I don't have my own shop yet. That's something I'm thinking about for the future. I don't sell through my own website, so automatically there's no point me even bothering to apply for that particular wholesale website. And they were, for example, the ones that offered the organic cotton on a wooden spool. So it might be, unless I can find a different wholesaler to supply me with that one, it might be that just isn't an option for me. So then I might have to go with the Gutermann one because that's the only one I can like physically source. So just lots of little things like that to think about. But yeah, definitely watch this space. I really like being able to offer kits because I think it's quite nice for people to have like the whole lot, and then you're kind of ready to go. You don't need to go out and get anything else, because certainly when I'm planning projects, that's often the thing that not puts me off, but that's the thing that becomes like a bit of a hassle, doesn't it? Where you're like, I've got the pattern, I've got the fabric, but now I need to get thread, and it's hard to source matching thread on the internet, because you don't necessarily know if the colours are exact and all that sort of stuff. But then I don't necessarily want to go into a physical shop right now, and it's just like an extra step where you have to like organise yourself to get to a shop, and I personally am never really near any shops that sell thread, so it would mean having to go out doing a physical like separate trip. So, it's not the end of the world, but I think if you can buy a kit and it comes with absolutely everything you need, and then it arrives and you can just get going that afternoon, like that really appeals to me, definitely. And then, thinking from a business point of view, obviously, like with Christmas coming up, I'm the kind of shop that doesn't really make a huge amount of sales in the run up to Christmas, because historically I've not really offered anything that could be considered a gift. For the most part, I think people buy fabric for themselves. They don't necessarily buy fabric for other people. So last year I offered gift wrapping with the thought that people might then buy fabric as presents and offer it gift wrapped, and literally nobody bought it. So luckily I'd only bought enough stuff to wrap 10 items. But yeah, so that was a bit of a waste of time, albeit I learned something. So I don't know, I feel like kits might be more of a gift, something that someone could buy for someone else. So expanding my range of kits definitely appeals, and especially because I've got all this jersey, right? So anything I can do to make jersey more appealing to people is definitely a plus. So that's one kit, and then I've got another one here just to show you. It's the same for the sew your own undies, but obviously like different colour of fabric and of elastic. I love that kind of ombre. It's cool. And then this little bit is just an SKU marker, so it's just an inventory number, just makes it easier for me to find it when people order. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this episode. I really appreciate every single one of you who likes and subscribes, who tells a friend, who leaves me a comment. I particularly appreciate Grey Hamster, my brother-in-law, who it turns out watched all of my Me Made May mini videos, which was adorable, and is now giving me a lot of advice on how to make sourdough. So he gave me part of his sourdough starter. So I've got dough Biden sitting on the windowsill, ready to be baked into bread later on. I also wanted to give a shout out to Andy Hunter, who is one of Andrew's friends, who gave me a lot of help with the video setup when I got going with this. So he did that whole like dial in remotely, like ghost in the machine thing, to help me with all the settings because I couldn't get the audio to sync up with the video. And the cutlery roll that you saw as a time-lapse video earlier on, that's for Andy to say thank you for all the time that he put into helping me. And yeah, thanks so much for tuning in this month. And as ever, everything that you would need in terms of links and whatnot is down in the description below. If you could like and subscribe and tell a friend, I would very much appreciate it. But otherwise, I'll see you all in June. Bye!